So this presentation was originally called, and he didn't invent sex either, but I didn't know if they would like that here, so I call it the strategy behind content strategy, although I like the other title better. So it's all about driving business value, and I'm probably not your average content strategist, so I don't know how many of you follow any kind of content strategy discussions on Twitter or anything, no? Yeah, a few of you. So there's kind of like front-end content strategists and back-end content strategists, and so back-end means you understand the technology underneath, and that's where I kind of play. So how we got here. So if you look at a short history of publishing, you started 40,000 years ago, BC, with cave paintings, and you didn't have too much change until you kind of get, to 8 BC, and all of a sudden you get to really, quick changes where we have taken content from scratchings on cave walls to paper to now digital and multi-channel and omni-channel. So it used to be very simple to deliver content. You had the editor's marks. Have any of you used those editor's marks? Yeah, a few of you? Okay. And so you marked it up, somebody retyped it or, edited the digital version, in Word or whatever was before that, like WordPerfect. And you had like the 4 C's. The 4 C's were sacred, right? Clear, complete, correct, and concise. And now you've got more complexity to content. So what we've got now is something that we were calling multiplicity, where you have a piece of content, and that gets used in 4 different products, in 4 different product lines, and in 4 different products in each product line, so that's 16, and then you start to do these things in other languages or in other media or whatever, and so you're reusing that one piece of content, and this came from, it was in the book that I wrote with a fellow named Nazir Bina, and he counted that one piece of content got used 12,000 times. So you can imagine if you had to rewrite those things 11,999 times over again, or if there was a typo in one of those. And I did something with a bank where they said we had 4 people working for 3 months to change something that a regulator wanted changing. And I said, are you finished the project? Oh yeah, a while ago. So I did a quick Google search and I found 11,300 of the old wording still on the web. And it's like, okay, so you had 1 person year of work to change all of those, except you forgot 11,300. So when we look at content, why do we do content in the first place? Well, there are 5 basic business drivers, and everything else kind of fits under that. There's brand loyalty, and a lot fits under brand loyalty. We want people to trust us, so we want the price to be right, the images to be right, the description to be right. So we have to have focused, quality content that inspires trust. Risk management. Any of you in regulated industries? Oh, a couple of you. So finance, insurance, health, there are a number of them, pharmaceuticals. I walk around all the time going, is it good content? Can we pass an audit? Will we survive a lawsuit? And then, it becomes old after a while, but I have to keep saying it because, they'll say, well, we don't really need accessibility for that. Yes, you do. Can we survive a lawsuit? So, that's a big driver for a lot of industries. Extend reach. We want to be able to go from the UK market to the EU market, or to the American market, or the Canadian market, the North American market, and so on. And so each one of these means a new audience, and it means some sort of personalization. So whether it's just changing the spelling from UK to US English, or to Canadian English, or for us it's Rwandan English and Singapore English and other kinds of English, it's a form of personalization. And that goes into localization. So in our case, for healthcare, you don't just change the language. There are changes in compliance, there are changes in medical practices, there are changes in culture, and other changes, and we have to kind of get all of that. And how do you scale? So you have to have very, very efficient production methods, because otherwise you can't scale. You get to some point and you hit that wall. And it's either, let's hire another whack of people, or we have to work smarter and not harder. So the content strategy maturity model, again, this comes from my book, and so I realize it's a little fuzzy here because it's so big. But we kind of go from that, are we ad hoc? This is usually the startup phase, and most of us operate somewhere in here. You know, you can have multiple publishing processes, but they're in silos. There's no connection between them. Or there's some integration, but it's at the publishing end. So how many of you actually work in the CMS? So you do all your writing and your sign off in the CMS, and then, like right from the start. Cool. Because when I came here to the UK, I was shocked at how many, because I was consulting for many years before I joined Babylon, and I was shocked at how many people worked in Word and handed it to a specialist who then copy and pasted it into the CMS and dealt with the components and added the metadata. And that's why you get crappy metadata, because they look at this and they don't know the history behind it, and they go, yeah, welcome to, you know, it's really bad. So what we try to do is to get somewhere up between here and here. Not everybody needs to reach level 5, but you need to at least reach level 4. And a lot of that ends up being underlying processes, technologies, and infrastructure. And we think of content as in content lifecycle because it's not like supply chain. I was once given a supply chain guide, and they went, here's your new global director of content. He's like, content's like a supply chain. I went, no. This is more like a slinky toy where you go around and around and around and around. By the time you get to version 15, if you haven't done version 1 well, you just want to like poke yourself, poke a stick into your eye because you're so frustrated. And so you have to kind of think about everything that goes on, your analysis of like, what are we doing and why are we doing it, and how much money do we have to do it, and what's going to be the governance of it. And then let's go out and get that content, whether we write it or whatever we do. And then how do we actually use it and manage it? There's nothing worse than kind of going like, we need to do this to keep up with the competition. They go, we didn't build the database that way. Sorry. You know, come back when you have a budget and a team and some agile sprints, and then we'll test, and you'll have it in 6 months. And you kind of go, oh, gosh. And then there's the whole publishing end, or delivery, because I don't think we actually publish much anymore. We deliver to downstream systems, and they publish. So you do something here, and then it goes out. And we also have the customer lifecycle to deal with. So this would be an example of like omni-channel, where you start with maybe a TV ad, and then the tablet prompts you to create a profile, and that leads to the store with a coupon, and then it leads to a purchase. And so each one of these steps requires something different in content. So not only are you dealing with the content lifecycle, but you're dealing with the customer lifecycle, and probably the product lifecycle. And when you put those three together, it's really hard to keep them all in sync. And there's actually a fabulous book called Outside In Marketing by James Matthewson, who was with IBM. And he talks about all of the ways that they got all of these synchronized, and they knew what customers would want at each stage of the customer journey, and they had all the content tagged up, so they know if you had this, you're probably going to be looking for that afterwards. It's a thing of beauty. So without content, what do we have? What is this site? Does anyone recognize this site? Yes? No? No? Sorry? No? PayPal. So without content, you have nothing. Like everyone was like the user experience, except the user experience is like the treasure hunt. But if you ever watch that Big Bang Theory where Raj puts together a treasure hunt and they get to the end and they open the box and they go, that sucks. And if you ask any 5-year-old that's gone to a birthday party where they, run around and climb under things and over things and whatever, you try to tire them out after the chocolate cake, and then they get to the end and it's like, there's 3 candies in the box, and they'll tell you that the whole treasure hunt sucked because the prize wasn't good. And the prize here is the content. That's what you interact with. You don't know what to do unless you're interacting with some content. So delivering content gets really complicated. And we've got all these different kinds of content, and digital means technical. It does. So this is the semantic web. And if you look at here, you've got all these like kind of these layers, you know, in your technology stack. But where's the content? You know, they talk about the user interface and applications. Maybe contents is in there. Unifying logic, oh, well, all right. Ontologies and taxonomies, okay, that's a bit of metadata, which is content. But you've got all of this content that you have to figure out how to knit together to be able to deliver on your brand promise without going broke. So the misnomer of content management is, I had a presentation where I had about 8 of these things, of all like the top agencies in the world and their whole content management ecosystem. And some of them have like, it's kind of pour content into here. That's the extent of content for them. It's already done. It happens magically. It's kind of like, you know, here's your baby. You know, I found it in the pond somewhere. That kind of thing. So here they mention the content service, the content components, content storage, but where's the actual like content creation? Yeah, that's somewhere over there. So standards make the world go round. And there are lots of content standards, which nobody seems to know about. And we always say standards are like toothbrushes. Everyone knows we should have them, but everyone wants their own. Like they don't want to use anyone else's. So you try to make a standard and you come up with another standard. But we've got taxonomy standards and terminology standards and document exchange. So all these standards are important. And I just went through an exercise with the marketing department. It's like, can you take out those metadata fields because they're really annoying to fill out? And I'm thinking, how are we supposed to personalize if you take that out? But they didn't realize, right? So if you don't follow these standards, have you ever filled something out with a like a travel? You know, you get your reservations and it pre-populates and it populates them in the wrong field. That's because somebody didn't pay attention to the standards in the background. that's you know, this is kind of my rant, like, oh yeah. So the Holy Grail is actually this kind of single sourcing of content. They used to call it COPE, but we changed it to CODA, which is create once, deliver anywhere. So when you have this big content pond, you know, you take it back to the digital pond, we've got this content pond, and you should be able to output to the web, to wearables, to mobile, to print software, to user assistance. It started with NPR in the US. And what we have now is an increasing number of outputs. So we start with, you know, our database of content, and it goes out to the web and wearables and so on and so forth. But then now you've got this in how many languages? And how do you synchronize all that? There's a way to do it, you know. SAP is doing it, IBM is doing it. Like there's lots of large organizations that are doing it. But they've learned the hard way that they have to do it because otherwise they'll sink. And smaller companies will say, well, you know, we'll send it out to an agency or we'll hire another person. It's not like with IBM where you have 18 million knowledge base articles that you have to manage, right? So they can't just say, yeah, we'll hire another 1,000 people. We'll hire 2,000 people. So I always like this of Albert Einstein, we can't solve our problems at the same level of thinking that we created them. So anytime somebody says, we have a spreadsheet, I'm like, you're just using people as a slow computer. That should be built in. So if you think about, you know, where's the power authoring environment? Where can you work and tag up your stuff to say, here's a topic. This is pretty UK specific. So we're going to take that sentence that, I don't know, refers to the NHS, and I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to go UK only. And then I'm going to write the equivalent for US, and I'm going to write the equivalent for Canada, and I'm going to write the equivalent for Australia. And then I will tag them up, and I have one topic with everything there, and then there's some magic that happens, and it pushes it out to the appropriate place. That's efficient. But there are too many of us who say, let's just use a spreadsheet. I'll just put it in a spreadsheet, and then I'll get to somebody and I'll copy and paste wherever it has to go. So there's this principle called intelligent content, and there's a book called Intelligent Content, a Primer, and it talks about kind of how semantics ends up being, our metadata is like the key to all of this. This is the magic sauce. So we have basic semantics. So think H1, what does H1 mean? It means it's a heading. But it doesn't tell you it's a heading of what? Is it a heading of a recipe? Is it a heading of a blog post? Is it a heading of an article, of an event? It doesn't tell you anything. Paragraph, what does that tell you? Not much. Ordered list means there are numbers, that's all. But if you have intelligent semantics, you say it's an instruction, and then you have the topic title, you have a short description, you have steps, and then it numbers it automatically, and you don't have to go back and renumber anything. And then you have even a note. Here it's a paragraph, here it says it's an alert type, and that alert is a note. It's not a caution or warning, it's a note. And so that's more, what it shows is intent. And Google really likes intent. You can get a big SEO boost from intent. So if we're going to structure for CODA, there are two ways you can do it. There's the manual way and then there's the CODA way. So manual way is, and I took something very, very simple. Go back to the home screen, press escape, or choose back from the menu. Okay, then you would copy and paste and you would say, go back to the home screen to tap the X for your tablet. And then you would say, touch the button, if you're on the phone. And if you're on an Android, you would do that. But in a CODA way, you would just mark it up. And I've oversimplified the metadata, but you would say, that's for web, that's for iOS. Oh, that shouldn't be and. Oh, the formatting went a bit wonky. This is for your tablet, and this paragraph is for the web only. And you wouldn't say back. You would put this as a label, and you'd put it as a code, and you would pick it from a list. Because what happens when somebody changes accounts to my accounts? If you ever tried to do something on Google to manage your Google account, you come up with this where it says, go to accounts, settings, something, something, and you go, I don't see accounts. Oh, I see settings. I wonder if that's the same setting or if that's a different settings. And it gets out of sync. And so this way you keep it all in sync because that goes into the interface, it goes into the documentation, it goes into the online help, and so on and so forth. So my thing is that you need to do this, you need to know your theory. There's so many of these style guides, I'm going to offend everybody in the room now, there's so many of these style guides, it's like, do this, check mark, don't do this. And then you start saying, okay, this I think is about prepositional clauses, but hold on, three pages down, they say this something and it contradicts what they said three pages up, so I don't really get it because when you start to look at the theory and the rules, it doesn't make sense. So you need to know your theory. You need to know about consistent editorial structure. You need to think about things like self-dependencies. In a book you can say see below, but often it's not below when it's on your phone. It can be somewhere else, or to the right. Look at the thing to the right, and then it's not to the right. It's somewhere else. You have to worry about idiom and pronouns. Localization mapping is huge if you're doing anything internationally. The semantic tagging, the semantic structure. So all of those things, and control vocabulary. Because if you start with a paragraph with it, and that word refers back to something in the previous paragraph, and now you've componentized it, and so now the word it doesn't refer to the same thing anymore, and now you're just telling somebody to jump off a bridge inadvertently. Not cool. So what we want to do is we want to write once and then reuse it. So I call this like the linen handkerchief model, because you can write something and then use it and throw it away the way you would do a tissue, or you can get a handkerchief and you can use it, but then you wash it and press it and use it again. And when you think of how much content costs to make, if you're doing that like automatic writing, like in California, all of the earthquake reports are all automated, right? So it's automatic writing, nobody writes it, so it's cheap. You can use it once, throw it away. But when it costs 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds to create a piece of content, you don't want to use it once and throw it away. You want to get your value out of it. So you want to write once and reuse for multiple outputs. You want to translate once and reuse for multiple outputs. You want your phrases stored in the translation memory, and you don't want to be charged for translation on subsequent rounds. So all of these things add up. You want to be able to maximize your assets. So what we want to do is actually create a superset of content with all these little bits that can go in there, and you can output it in different subsets. You know, this is the subset for this country or that country, or for this audience or that audience. You know, I'm always saying, if we're talking about STDs to a bunch of teenage boys in East London, it's very different from talking about STDs to a postmenopausal woman in a Muslim country, right? It's just very different. You're going to have a different tone. Same voice, of, you know, the benevolent doctor, but a very different tone. So how do you do that? You can do that by having different subsets. So here's an example from when I did some stuff at eBay. You'd say, get your item soon, standard shipping and handling charges apply, or get your item sooner with US Postal Express. Very US centric. So what we would say is, if we wanted to vary it for 3 more markets, we'd still say get your item soon. We would say for Australia, it's postage and handling. For UK, it's postage and packaging. And for the US and Canada, it's shipping and handling. And now everybody understands it. And we wouldn't put in here the name of any country's, you know, like US Postal Service. We would say whatever, replace that publish time with whatever the express service is for that country. And then there's like a content build that happens. And when you do the content build, it just builds it. So just the way you do a code build and everybody goes and plays foosball, you do a content build. You come back and it's done. So we call this baked versus fried. What's the difference? Well, in a baked, which is every web CMS ever. So that's just the way, that's what defines it as being like a web CMS, is the developers code the business rules into the web CMS, and then the author copies content into the forms, or you type them into the forms, and then it's the CMS that delivers the content as per the business rules. It's very easy for authors, so think of updating your LinkedIn profile. You put some stuff in and you hit save and it's voila. However, it's technology controlled. You can't say to LinkedIn, look, I would really not like to have blue headings. If they're blue headings, it's up to LinkedIn. It's not up to you. And the technology can become a blocker because you say, we need this changed. And they say, come to me with a budget and you know, your team and whatever, and then we'll do it. And we'll do it 3 months from now because it's, you know, whatever. And, so then there's the fried method. So this is, and so we call that baked because it's like if you put an egg in a cake, you can't pull the egg out. But if you, in fried, if you make bacon and eggs, you can separate the bacon and the eggs easily. So in this method, the author creates and controls the content components. And that you have something that has an unfortunate name of being called the component content management system, although I just call it the power authoring system. That manages the component, and then you do this content build. So the advantages are that the content is controlled by the author, and it's very agile and scalable and audit trailed. The disadvantage is that you can't just enter some stuff and hit submit and then, you know, go have coffee. It means you need to upskill on your writing skills and on your software skills because you need to use some more powerful software to do this. So we want to improve content agility the agile way. So we don't want to do it like this. We want to do it like this. Everybody's seen this one before, right? Yeah. And that's my take on content strategy. So I'm from Babylon. By the way, we're hiring. We need some content designers, we need taxonomists, and a few other people. But go to the career section. There's a whole bunch there in UX and content. So thank you.
Thank you.